Dollar. Dirt on money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yep, what's good, original crew, man? We're back on the channel. Got a new Mr. Ballen. You can't outrun the Midnight Man and the Midnight Train to Georgia.
Okay. I'm done.
Did you see that one?
Yeah.
You can't see this. Hey, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go. If you want to first support, you got to do it. Check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
Lock it in with a thumbs up.
Well, let's see what this about. Can't outrun the Midnight Man. What is a Midnight Man? Never heard of such a thing. But you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's get it.
Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. And today, I'm going to share 3 stories that demonstrate that. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to house sit for the like button. But while you're there, make sure you glue all their kitchen cabinets shut. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. One day in 1785, a woman writhed in pain in a hospital bed at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, which was one of the largest and most advanced hospitals in Scotland at the time. Now, despite this hospital being enormous, the room this woman was in was very small, and it was very stark too. The walls were blank, the floors were blank, there was just a single window to the outside. In fact, the only furniture in this room was the metal bed that she was lying on. And this woman, as she was laying on this bed, she was gripping the bed frame and she was sweating profusely and she was shrieking in pain like her body was being ripped in half. And surrounding her on all sides were all these nurses sort of anxiously watching her to see what was going to happen next. This woman was in labor, and she'd been in labor for several hours, and so far, it was not going well. So giving birth in the 18th century looked a whole lot different than giving birth today, primarily because there really was very limited pain management tools at doctors' and nurses' disposal. I mean, there were no epidurals. They basically had opium they could just give to the women along with maybe some alcohol. That was it. Also, giving birth in the 18th century was far more dangerous to the mother than it is today. I mean, today, it's practically unheard of, at least in the UK, for mothers to die giving birth. It's something like 13 out of every 100,000 mothers dies during childbirth, so like 0.01% of people. But in the 18th century, it was like 30 times higher. Basically, women died at a fairly regular clip delivering babies. The reason for this was partly just because of bad sanitation. Back in the 18th century, it wasn't uncommon for doctors and nurses to not even wash their hands between patients. And so naturally, the spread of disease and bacteria was much higher. And then also, when it came to just complications, there just weren't that many available solutions. And so when this woman showed up at this hospital after her water broke, I mean, naturally, she was terrified. I mean, she obviously knew she had to come here and deliver this child. It was inevitable, but she knew the risks. And so here she is, she's terrified. But quickly, the staff, they took her in, they got her to this room, they laid her down, and it just sort of seemed like everything was sort of normal. Like they do this all the time. Yes, it's a risky and dangerous thing, but it just sort of seemed like her delivery was going to be fairly normal. And so for a couple of hours, she's laying in this bed, the nurses are checking on her, everything's fine. And then at some point, she begins to feel contractions. And so at this point, the staff is in the room with her and they start encouraging her to push. And so she's pushing and she's pushing, but she's not progressing. And eventually, after an examination, the staff determines that her baby's skull is so big that the baby is not able to exit her body. The baby is stuck in her birth canal. And so by 18th century delivery standards, this is a huge emergency. This is a major complication. And so the mother and the baby's lives are now in danger. So if this happened today, this woman would just be given an emergency C-section, and very likely she and the baby would be fine. Now, back in 1785, C-sections did exist, but they were extremely dangerous to the mother. It was basically a death sentence for the mother. And so they were only used if there really was no other option, and basically the mother was gonna die anyways. And so naturally the staff did not want to go to C-section at this point, and the mother laying there, certainly does not want to go to a C-section, and so she's screaming in agony, she's not progressing, it's like complete chaos in this room, and at some point one of the nurses senses like, okay, we need to do something here, and so she left the room. And a couple of minutes later, she came back with this gray-haired surgeon. And he walks over and he surveys this mad scene of screaming and yelling, and there's bodily fluids everywhere. I mean, it's absolute madness. And he looks at the mom and he just says, everything's gonna be fine, okay? Your pain, this miserable situation you're in, it's gonna be over in a second. And most importantly, you and your baby are gonna be just fine because I have a brand new piece of technology that's gonna save your lives. Dr. John Aitken was one of the leading doctors at this hospital. And in fact, he was a pioneer in the field of childbirth at the time. And one of the things he really focused on was finding ways to make giving birth not only less painful for the mothers, but also less dangerous, to lower the fatality rate. And recently, he had developed himself a new piece of technology specifically for the emergency that this woman was having when the baby got stuck in the birth canal. He had come up with it, and now here was his chance to put it to use. And so when he kind of explained this piece of technology to this totally distraught woman who can barely focus, all she really heard was, it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna get rid of your pain. Your baby's gonna be good. You're gonna be good. And she's relieved and she's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then Dr. John Aitken, he leaves the room, and when he comes back, he's now carrying this instrument. And suddenly the woman, when she sees the instrument, she goes from being relieved to being downright horrified at the idea that that is going to be used on her. But even though she began to panic and literally tried to leave the bed to get away from this doctor and this crazy barbaric looking tool, the staff literally held her down, basically strapped her to the bed. And then Dr. John Aitken said, okay, here we go. And he turns on this instrument, and this woman, she's already in blinding pain. She can't believe she's experiencing this much pain. But when he begins to apply this instrument to her body, the pain somehow becomes even worse. It's like she begins having this out-of-body experience. The pain is so intense. And then suddenly, when it feels like it literally can't get any worse than this, that she must be dying, it all kind of fades for a second, and she hears the sound that she did not expect to hear. It was the sound of a baby crying. Okay. Her baby had just been successfully extracted from her stomach. Her baby was okay. And amazingly, she was okay too. Dr. John Aitken had been right. This instrument, despite how horrifying it was, really worked. And it literally did save her and her baby's lives. So the procedure that this woman underwent was known as a symphysiotomy. And the procedure itself had been around since, the 17th century. This was a procedure used when a baby got stuck in the birth canal. And the way this procedure worked is they would go in and sever the joint called the pubic symphysis, which connects the left and right pelvis bones. So imagine, right in the middle of your crotch, them going in there and cutting through this big, thick joint to basically open up your birth canal. I mean, this is a highly invasive and excruciatingly painful procedure. That is, until Dr. John Aitken invented this new piece of technology, the thing he just used on this woman to save her and her baby's lives. This piece of technology made the symphysiotomy basically more targeted and more efficient. So it's still totally invasive and painful and awful, but smaller incision, much faster, and a higher success rate. And so despite the fact that Aitken's invention sort of looked really barbaric, it caught on very quickly and sort of became the standard for how these symphysiotomies were done. They used this tool. And it would remain that way until about the turn of the 20th century, which is when C-sections became much safer, which meant the need for symphysiotomies decreased dramatically, which meant this tool was sort of no longer needed in hospitals. And so basically this tool sort of faded into obscurity until another group, completely unrelated to medicine, found a very specific use for this instrument. And that group were lumberjacks. They found that this tool, which had previously been used to cut open women's bodies and sever these large joints, was also really good at cutting down trees. The device that Dr. John Aitkins invented for medicine was actually just a chainsaw.
A chainsaw.
What the fuck? That's painful.
I'm gonna have to. Okay. Yeah. I would have been trying to get up out that bed too. What you talking about?
Damn.
Especially that's my first time ever seeing one. Like back, if I was like, and you walk in with that talking
I guess
about.
you gotta do what you gotta do though.
I guess so.
Man, them early inventions were crazy, bro.
I know.
Just imagine 200 years from now when inventions like get easier. Maybe like things we use to this day, we like this easy, this light work. Yeah. They're gonna be like, I can't believe they were using this shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
cause like even television, right? Like TV we grew up on.
Yeah.
Kids now they be like, I can't believe y'all used to watch TV on that. I'm like, it ain't been that long though.
Yeah.
But they just can't, or even cell phones.
True.
One night in the summer of 1904, a young woman named Anna Gray was laying in her bed in her second-story room in a bed and breakfast in Chicago, Illinois. Except she couldn't sleep. She couldn't really tell why she couldn't sleep, but her stomach was kind of upset from the mince pie she had eaten earlier, and it was kind of, her stomach was rumbling around, and so maybe that was why. And also, the air in the room was very stuffy, there wasn't any circulation, and so she's just laying in silence as her stomach is growling, and it was very uncomfortable. And so eventually, Anna felt so frustrated that she was not able to sleep that finally she just threw the covers off, hopped out of her bed, and walked over to the window, and she opened it up to let in some fresh air. And even though, her stomach still felt pretty upset, having the fresh air hit her and sort of circulate through the room did, even if it was just by a small percentage, make her feel a little bit better. And now that she was standing up near the window and sort of realizing how late it was, she suddenly did feel sort of tired. And she was like, great, I'll leave the window open and I'll go back to sleep. So she walked back to her bed, laid down, pulled the covers up over her, and sure enough, just a couple of minutes later, she had fallen asleep. But several hours later, Anna suddenly woke up. She's laying in her bed, her eyes shoot open, and for a second, as she's laying there, she can't quite remember where she is. She's confused, disoriented, and then she remembers, oh yeah, I'm in that bed and breakfast, I'm in Chicago, okay, I'm going home tomorrow, okay. But as she's laying there, sort of putting together what's happening, she just has this weird feeling that something just feels off in the room. She can't quite place it, but there's something wrong here. And so instinctively, Anna sits up in her bed, and she kind of just surveys this small room that she's in. And at first, everything seems totally in order. There's nothing odd here at all. It's just a late night inside of a bed and breakfast. It's still, it's quiet. There's nothing going on here. But then as she scans the room one more time, her eyes stop on the open window because now there is a man sitting on the windowsill, looking into the room right at her, unflinching, just staring right at her. And Anna, in an instant, is looking at the sky and a million thoughts go through her head. She's thinking, oh my God, he's here to hurt me. He must have climbed up and he's about to come in here and attack me. Like, what's going on here? She doesn't know if she's dreaming. She's just completely panicked. And unlike a lot of people who in this situation might freeze completely or scream and try to hide or run away, Anna's fight or flight response was to fight. And so it was almost like in a fraction of a second, she had leapt out of the bed to confront this man, this stranger in her room. But the man, as soon as she jumped up, he didn't budge. He's just sitting there staring at her. And then almost delicately, he leaned backwards and fell out the window. And now Anna's thinking, oh my God, is he okay? She doesn't know who he is, but that's a serious fall. They're on the second floor. And so she runs to the window, looking out, expecting to see this guy, with a broken neck down on the ground. But she looks down and there's nobody there. The window's wide open. She left it open before. And so she's kind of looking around to make sure, did he really fall out the window? Did he come into the room? But But no, she's all alone in her room. And so she's looking down to see if maybe he kind of, ran up against the side of the house and maybe he's gonna show himself, but there's nobody. And then at some point she notices there's this long, dark car that's parked out on the street underneath the street light. And she couldn't remember if that car had been parked there the whole time. It seemed sort of out of place, but she just couldn't remember. And so she's looking at this vehicle and she realizes there's somebody in the car. And as she's staring at the car, the driver begins to move. They sort of position their bodies down low and they look up at Anna, and Anna realizes it's the same guy who was just sitting in her windowsill and fell out the window a second ago. He's in this car. And so Anna, she's just frozen looking at this guy, wondering how could this be happening?
Right.
Is this a nightmare? Is this real? She doesn't know. But as she's looking, this guy who's looking up at her, he extends his hand out the driver's side window and begins beckoning to Anna, telling her to come down and get in the car with him. And so Anna, she's seeing this and she's also realizing the car he is in is a hearse. And so she is just beyond terrified, and instinctively she just jumps back, slams the window, and sort of just pretends like this can't be happening, like this is not real. But then after a couple of seconds, she's thinking, I gotta make sure I know where this guy is, where he's gonna go next. And so she goes right back to the window to see what he's doing. But now the hearse, the man, they're gone. And so Anna remained at this window for quite a while, just looking out the window, just making sure this guy really was gone. Because again, she just doesn't know, like, was this real? Am I imagining things? Am I going crazy? Was this a nightmare? Like, she doesn't know. And so she's just standing there waiting, watching, but this guy doesn't reappear, the hearse doesn't reappear. And so eventually she crawls back in bed, and after what felt like forever, she drifted off into a fairly light sleep. And then before long, she opened her eyes again and sunlight had filled the room. She had survived the night. And so now, feeling the comfort and safety of light in the room and knowing that it's a new day, she told herself, wow, like, that was crazy, that was terrifying. That had to have been just a particularly vivid nightmare. Like, there's no other reasonable explanation for this. It had to be a nightmare. So Anna got out of bed, convinced she was just fine, that nothing strange has happened here at all. She got herself together and she left the bed and breakfast, and she headed out to this brand new department store that had just opened up in Chicago. She wanted to go and have a nice day of shopping. And so Anna gets to this department store, and it's so vibrant and it's bustling with people, and there's 4 floors of all this incredible stuff that they're selling. And for the next several hours, Anna just has a great time walking all around, picking out things she likes, and just basically enjoying shopping. And then eventually, when she was up on the 4th floor, after she had purchased all the things she was gonna buy, she decided it was time to leave. Now, by this point, she had basically completely forgotten about whatever happened the night before. The sky, the hearse, all of it. It was completely out of her mind. She is back to normal. And so she makes her way over to the elevator to go down to the 1st floor. And so she hits the button and she's waiting and waiting. And then eventually she hears a noise, a dinging sound, and the doors open up. And there's loads of people on this elevator car. It is packed. And so, like most of us would do in this situation, Anna kind of waved them off and said, I'll take the next one. And she's expecting that, the doors will close and these folks will go down, and, when it comes back up, she'll get on, and that's that. This is like not a big deal at all. She's not even thinking about it. Just go ahead. But the doors don't close. And instead, as she's kind of, not really looking over in their direction, she hears this voice come out of the elevator car. And it's this kind of rude tone. It's a man's voice, and he calls out, "One more," like demanding that Anna get in there. Like, what are you doing? You're holding up the car. And Anna was kind of taken aback by whoever was kind of barking this order at her. And she turned around and she looked into the elevator car, and she couldn't really tell where the voice was coming from. But then eventually she noticed it was coming from the guy who operated the elevator car. The elevator was manual. There was somebody who literally moved the car up and down, and she kind of didn't see the guy's face at first, but eventually, when the guy kind of poked his head through and looked at her, confirming that, yeah, I'm talking to you, get in the car, she realized the elevator car operator was the man in the hearse that she had seen in her windowsill. It was the same guy. And so Anna is so horrified, she gasped out loud and just was like, no, I'm not going in there, no. And so all the folks that are in the elevator car, they do not know what's going on. And they're kind of looking around like, what's happening here? And the car operator continues to look out at Anna for a second. Then he just kind of scoffs at her like, fine. Then the doors close and the elevator disappears. And for a moment, Anna's telling herself, like, what is going on? That can't be the same guy. It's just gonna be a coincidence, right? But as she's having these thoughts, these crazy thoughts, trying to rationalize something that's not rational, she suddenly heard this loud, metallic crunching sound inside of the elevator shaft, followed by what was obviously people screaming. It would turn out that elevator car that she nearly got into, but didn't because of her fear of this guy that she was seeing again, the same guy from her bedroom the night before, that elevator car, as it began its descent, it malfunctioned and fell 4 stories, killing 2 people on board. Now, unfortunately, we don't really know much more about what ultimately happened with the elevator operator, if they ever confirmed without a doubt that, that guy is the same one Anna saw the night before, or if he even really was on the elevator car. Like, we don't know that. But what we do know is Anna did speak to reporters, and they did widely publish this story. And that is how we know about it.
That's scary than a motherfucker. Just even the thought and imagine that I could have been on there.
Yeah.
And I wonder what's the placement of the individuals that did die. Were they in the front? Because she would have been in the front.
Been in the front. Yeah.
And just know, like, moments. If I had just said, "Okay, I'll come on,"
like,
that could have been me. You know how traumatizing it is for a lot of people, though.
That's scary. It's just everything else that happened beforehand, and you thinking that this is the. What y'all trying to do? What's up?
Why you say it like that? What y'all trying to do? What y'all trying to set me up for?
You know what I'm saying? This ain't ready. Okay.
Yeah,
Leave me alone.
I'll let you know why I'm ready, but today ain't the time. Try again in about 50 more years. The last tenant.
On the morning of July 5th, 2008, a 50-year-old man named David File walked up to his apartment in Bishopstoke, which is a small village in southern England. So this apartment complex was massive. It took up an entire block, and it was comprised of several 2-story buildings. When David moved in 8 years earlier, this apartment complex was sort of bustling and doing quite well. There were loads of tenants. It was well kept. I mean, it was a nice place to live. But now, the place was kind of fallen into disrepair. There were weeds everywhere. It was kind of dirty. There was graffiti. I mean, buildings were all boarded up. I mean, this place really had fallen on hard times, almost like it was abandoned. And in many regards, it basically was. In fact, David was literally the last tenant in the entire complex. There were a total of 72 apartments in this complex, but 71 of them were boarded up and totally abandoned. It was just this last apartment that David lived in. And on this day, as David approached his front door, he noticed there was something taped to it. It was a piece of paper. And so he walked up and he read it, and he quickly understood it was an eviction notice. They were kicking him out. And so he angrily ripped it off the door and he went inside his cramped, small apartment. There's a full-size billiard table sitting right in his living room, and everything was just tight and on top of each other. But this was David's home. He loved it here. He did not want to leave. And so he took this eviction notice and he went over to the kitchen and he just threw it on top of a pile of other papers that were mostly all from the company that owned this complex. The company was called Atlantic Housing. So part of the reason this building had really fallen on hard times here is because 2 years earlier, Atlantic Housing had decided to tear this place down. And so they had offered to help relocate all the tenants, and basically everybody else had agreed to leave and, take the assistance from Atlantic Housing, but not David. He refused to leave. And so eventually, Atlantic Housing got fed up with David because they're offering him money, they're offering him assistance. I mean, they're really trying to just get him to leave so they can move forward with their project. And so eventually, when he wouldn't budge, no matter what they offered him, they just sued him. And it took 2 years, but eventually a court ruled that, okay, Atlantic Housing, you can kick him out of your building. And so David, you're being evicted. And so David knew this was coming. He knew he was going to be evicted, but he just simply could not accept the ruling. He's looking around at his cramped little apartment that he had called home for 8 years. He just loved it here. He didn't want to leave. And so he thought to himself, you know what? They can try to evict me, but I'm not leaving. And so David decides he's gonna protest, but not some little protest. He's gonna do something that is so big, so extreme, that it will guarantee people will pay attention and recognize that this ruling is wrong. And David knew exactly how he was going to do that. And so later that afternoon, David made his way over to his storage closet and he pulled out some rope, an electric timer, and a power tool, and he brought these supplies over to his living room. And there, David rigged up this elaborate trap that he was designing specifically so that when Atlantic Housing or the police or whoever it was that showed up to evict him, that when they opened his door, they would have to be confronted by this trap. And for David, he felt like this was his last-ditch effort to prove once and for all that this eviction was wrong. A few hours later, 2 police officers, along with David's very worried parents, stood outside of David's apartment. Earlier that afternoon, David's parents had tried to get in touch with David and they had called him repeatedly, but he hadn't answered. And so at some point they had driven over to his apartment and they had pounded on the door and tried to get his attention, but he hadn't come to the door. However, they had heard this strange sound coming from inside the apartment. And it was unsettling enough, and considering the whole circumstance of not being able to get in touch with their son, that they decided to call the police. And so when they got there, the police, they're knocking on the door, yelling out for David, but still no answer. And the police too, they can clearly hear this strange sound, which almost sounded like a mechanical whirring sound or something. They couldn't quite place it, but there definitely was something odd happening in this apartment. And so given the fact that, there's real concern around what's going on with David, the police decide to kick in the door and see what's going on. And so they get out of the way, and one of the officers steps back and kicks the door down, and as soon as the door flies open, that loud mechanical whirring sound becomes way louder, so loud, and they suddenly get a complete view into the apartment, and all of them just froze and gasped. So the trap that David had built had functioned exactly as he intended it to. Basically, the authorities were gonna come in the front door and be horrified by what they saw, because this trap really was not for them as much as it was for David. He was sort of putting himself into a trap as a display of his protest that you can't pull me out of here. And now authorities have arrived and they've seen the results of this trap. What the trap was a power tool that was on, that was the mechanical whirring sound they heard, and it had been tied by David to one of the legs of his billiard table, like an arm jutting off the side of this billiard table. And then the tool had this electric timer that he had rigged to it so that when it went off, it would start the tool. And what was this tool? It was a chainsaw. And what did David do? He intentionally positioned his neck right up against the teeth of this chainsaw, set the timer, and then waited. He basically timed it so that shortly after getting in position, the timer would go off, it would cut his head off, and then presumably authorities would look inside the apartment and see what, in David's mind, they were responsible for: his death. And sure enough, when the police and the parents looked in, they saw the trap, they heard the saw buzzing, and they saw David's severed head on the ground. Despite David's final protest really having a lot of the effect that he was hoping for, it did make headlines all over the UK. A lot of people heard about this and they were horrified by it. Despite all that, shortly after his death, the apartment complex was demolished.
Yeah.
That was...
I don't know.
Just leave. In a situation like that, just leave.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nothing you did was gonna
was gonna stop them from doing what it is that they, set out to do. They're like, okay, now your parents having to bury a child, and the company is going on with whatever project that they had. I hate that you felt, that he felt like that was the only way for, but they don't care. I'm talking about companies.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the only thing they're thinking about is the money and return on their investment. They're not thinking about, well, let's not, because he doesn't, no, they don't care about that.
I do hate that, though, that he felt like that was his only option. So definitely rest in peace to David, but that's sad. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, rest in peace. That's a horrible way to go out.
That is a horrible way.
And at the end of the day, they just like, all right, clean it up. Not even clean it up.
Because they turn it down.
Like just.
So it's just.
Bulldoze over it, and it is what it is.
Like nothing happened. Nothing happened here. Yeah.
So disturbing, bro.
Very much
Then
so.
your parents had to find you like that. That's another kicker. Your parents found you like that.
Something is definitely doesn't sound right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, y'all spam us up in the comments. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it for us in the comment section down below. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Cee Nicole.
We are.
Kid and C.
We are.
Time to kick it, got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar. Let me watch out for my partners.